Welcome to Smart Architectural Programming. If you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for more Java programming tutorials. And if you're a Node subscriber, please like and comment on the video below to help push this along on the algorithm. And if you're accompanying us from the Introduction to Java accompanying video series with the book, let's get started on chapter 4 of our Introduction to Java book, which is Scopes and Scoping in Java, basically. So with everything, we need to first understand exactly what scoping is, right? So we need to do an understanding on scoping. So what is scopes in Java, basically, right? So in Java, scope refers to region of a program where a variable is accessible, right? Understanding scope is crucial because it helps in writing efficient and error-free code. Java has 4 main types of scopes that you need to understand: local scoping, instance scoping, static scoping, and block scoping. Let's break them down one by one and explain them one by one so you develop a better and clearer understanding about scoping. So first thing we need to understand is local scoping. That's the lowest level of deduction, basically. So a variable declared inside a method or a constructor is called a local variable. These variables are only accessible within the method they are declared in. Once the method finishes the execution, the variable is usually destroyed. What do we mean by that, basically? So let's see, look at an example here. As you can see here, we have a message is a local variable that we've declared within the function, within the curly braces. So I'm gonna just say that curly braces of Java determine the scoping, right? So if something is declared within 2 curly braces, it cannot be accessible outside of those curly braces. That's the general rule of thumb that you can remember with scoping in Java, generally, right? So here we have a string message on line 3, which is stored in that show message function here, and it cannot be accessed outside the show message method that we have declared, right? We call functions methods in Java, so in this Java, so we'll just call that method here. So here the method, only the method, which is basically, as you can see, these 2 curly braces here. Outside of that, this string cannot be accessible. So that is what local scoping means. Anything declared within 2 curly braces cannot be accessed outside of those curly braces, and that is a local scope, especially one declared in a method. Now that we understand that, let's move on to the next type of scoping, which is instance scope. So we need to understand that when a variable is declared inside a class but outside of any method, it belongs to an instance of the class. This means that each object of the class gets its own copy of the variable. So see, here it is just an extension of that concept of curly braces that I mentioned, right? So here we have a public class, right? Within that public class, we have a string called name, right? And within these 2 curly braces, that string has been declared. So, and this is the class, right? These 2 methods of the class can access that name variable because it's within these 2 curly braces. But the naming of this within a variable within declared within the class is called instance scoped variable because it is accessible between here and here, right? So there's just naming differences, but the main notion, always remember, is that 2 curly braces that surround the variable are the scope of that variable. That's a basic rule of thumb that you can apply in most circumstances in Java, right? So let's move on to static scoping next, basically. So what is static scoping, right? A variable declared with the static keyword belongs to a class rather than any specific instance. That means all objects of the class share the same copy of the variable. So here the curly braces rule slightly becomes, void, in the sense that any variable that has the static keyword used before them becomes an instance variable automatically, right? I mean, we call it static variables, but kind of what I mean by instant variable is that it's accessible throughout the class in the methods, no matter where it's declared. Here the count is shared among all instances of counter, as you can see, meaning if one object modifies it, the change is relatable across all objects, right? So that's basically what a static variable is and how it affects the scoping, right? And let's move on to finally block scopes, which is the last sort of scoping that we need to look into. Any variable declared within a block scope, like loops or conditional statements, exist only within that block. Again, it comes back to the curly braces. Loops and conditional statements have their own curly braces on top of them, right? So it's just a different naming convention throughout. The rule of thumb has always been curly braces, except in the case of static variables. So as you can see, the variable I is only accessible for the loop for inside the for loop. Trying to access it outside would cause an error. So that is basically what block scoping is here, right? It also includes these variables like the ones that we declare for for loops. So with that, I think we have pretty much wrapped up this video. At this point, let's do a quick summarization of what we've learned. We've learned local scope, which is limited to specific methods. We've learned about instance scope, which belongs to instance of a class. We've learned about static scopes, which shared among all instances of a class. And we have learned about block scopes, which exists only within a specific block of code. So I think that's a wrap on Java scopes. We hope this video clarified the concept for you. And if you're following along in our book, you've just started chapter 4 and you're pushing ahead aggressively into learning Java, and you're building those foundations that would help you get good in Java. If you found this helpful on our YouTube channel, please like and subscribe and share this video with your fellow programmers. See you on our next tutorial, and happy coding.